Will there be pets in heaven? Are we in the end times, Pastor? What are current believers
church
supposed to do with spiritual
have been
reality,
since
and how would we grow in this
Jesus
area?
proclaimed it.
Hello, and welcome back to Now That'll Preach. My name is Jared Crowley. I'm your host. Sitting across from lead pastor of Church of the Harvest, David Frech. And That'll Preach basically is a resource that we here at Church of the Harvest put on. We take your comments, your questions, any kind of topics that you want to hear Pastor David preach about, and we throw it at him with no preparation at all, off the cuff, off riff. And we basically put it on so that, it's intended to basically grow you closer in your relationship with God through kind of some of these weird questions that you don't always have the opportunity to ask, or maybe they seem silly to you, they don't seem super important, and we're here to go through them all, run through them all. So, you ready, sir? You ready? All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, the question this week is, it's actually kind of cute. It was someone's 4-year-old niece that asked their mom, and then it stuck in the back of her head for years. But does God love Satan, or did he ever love Satan?
Well, that's a great question. Kids can nail you sometimes. Well, it's in the nature of God to love, right?
Yeah.
So God loves all things and loves his creation. But Satan is the sworn enemy of God. Mm-hmm. So the issue of the conflict between Satan and God is in relationship to Satan's being God's sworn enemy. Mm-hmm. So God can't function out of anything but love, but not on the opposite side of it, but in congruence with it, he is holy, he is just, he is righteous.
Sure,
so
yeah.
that love manifests itself through all of those filters. So the filter of love is manifested through justice. Love is manifested through righteousness. Yeah. Love is manifested through truth. Love is manifested through even his anger, because the Bible talks about God being angry. So, in fact, the language in Proverbs is God is angry with the wicked every day. Every day. So he's mad at them.
Yeah.
Does that mean he doesn't love them? Right. So have you ever been mad at somebody you love?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of comes with the territory.
It does, doesn't it? Because they disappoint expectations,
Right.
They frustrate, they hurt, they, whatever. And so the idea that God doesn't love something that, by the way, Satan was created. Satan became Satan. That's his degenerative name. His real name was Lucifer. He was an archangel. So he was created to serve God, and then he rebelled against that service and fell as a consequence of that service. So even that was not unloving, but it was just and righteous.
Sure, yeah.
So we tend to think, well, if it's love, then you're always sympathetic. It's allowances. It's it's being willing to just accept and endure, and there are elements that is true, but there are times when love is manifested in other ways.
Yeah.
So love would be manifest in something that's just, right? If I love somebody, they need to experience the power of justice, because justice is going to teach them lessons that compliance and acceptance won't teach them.
Yeah.
And so your motives are different. They're arranged differently. Of course, God's perfect love.
Right.
Therefore, there you go.
Yeah.
But he also understands that in his redemptive nature, that Satan cannot be and will not be redeemed.
Yeah.
And so there's a just punishment in relationship to that. And of course, that's the second death. So the answer to her question would be, yes, God loves everything and everyone, even the most heinous and horrible people you could ever meet on planet Earth. God still loves them, but relates to them based on their thinking, their activities, their obediences, their surrenders, and yet he moves lovingly towards them, even though they might still experience the consequences of their choices and their decisions. So it's a balance that we don't fully understand.
Definitely.
But it's a balance that absolutely exists with God.
Yeah. We were kind of talking about a similar subject last night in my guys group, because we were talking about sort of unlovable people and talking about how, we're called to love the way God loves. And Paul says, will be known by the way that we love. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like people will know where we belong to God because of how we love.
Absolutely.
So how do you put that up against somebody that's just so hard to love? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so that I see that as being much more related to what God's trying to work into us to get more perfected love out of us.
Sure. Yeah.
Because God already knows how to love his enemies, and we're learning to do that.
Right.
God already knows how to love those that hate him and reject him and are offensive towards him. Because the whole universe, or I shouldn't say the universe, but the whole world, mankind, is set in rebellion against God until they surrender and give their life to him.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing he experiences from mankind until they come into faith.
Yeah. Right.
The apex of his creation.
Yeah.
All he experiences from them is rejection and offense and anger and frustration and blame and so on and so forth. That's all he experiences.
Right.
And yet he's undeterred in his love towards us.
Yeah.
Right. So in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Yeah.
It's this idea that he still actively pursues us when we are absolutely unlovable. And so for God, he's already there. For you and I, we're getting there.
Yeah,
It's a
right,
process.
right.
And so I find that the unlovable people, it's not about them. It's about me becoming perfected in love.
Yeah.
It's about what God's trying to work into me.
So good. Yeah.
And
for sure.
so that's a great point, though, because we are all challenged about that
Right.
at various levels. And there could be no greater example of that than in that little girl's question.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Does God love, or did he ever love Satan? Because the idea, well, he's Satan now, so God can't love him.
Right.
Well, that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and but the separation, the distance, the sworn enemy aspect of it is on Satan's part, not on God's.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as Satan is resisting and attacking God's purposes in the earth, God is resisting.
Sure.
For this reason, the Son of God was manifest, that he might destroy the works of the devil.
Yeah,
So,
right.
God's here to clean up what Satan tries to make a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
There
pretty
you
wild.
go.
Yeah, that's pretty wild to think about. Like even the idea of like a redemption plan, you know what I mean? That could exist, like if Satan was willing, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, and he, he's in the truest sense fully reprobate.
Yeah.
He has no capacity.
Right.
To turn back or to surrender or to become redemptive in his decision making. He has gone beyond that, and God warns that can even happen in people.
Yeah.
And so to be aware of that, and that based on our conscience being seared with a hot iron is a factor, and continue rebellion against the known will of God is a factor, and making decisions against the known right and truth and righteousness is a factor. These things all build us up and gives us a callousness to God's redemptive plan and work in our life, to where at some point we begin to think, well, I don't need God. I'm the God of my own universe. I make my own things happen. I'm the creator of my own things, blah, 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 blah. And then we begin to literally, as Romans 1 says, we don't retain God in our knowledge, and we are given over to, ungodly affections, various lusts and desires that are not natural or normal. And then that last thing that happens is we become reprobate in our thinking, empty, void of the ability to retain God, understand God, or even anything relatable to God.
Right.
And at that point, we become literally unredemptive.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that place is, but God does.
Right. Yeah. No, it's crazy to think about, and it's crazy to think about his, even if you could be that far gone, his heart towards you, like we're saying, it's
Never
still
changes.
loving and still,
Never
it's
changes.
so amazing to think about, and so it just kind of breaks apart all the systems that your mind puts in place of how things work, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, appreciate your perspective, man. Appreciate your
pleasure.
response to the question. Yeah, obviously super fun to think about, super cute to think about, like a little kid wondering that question. And
Kids can ask the best questions. They really can.
that's what she said. She was like, neither one of us, my sister or I, like knew what to say to this. Like we
And I don't know that my explanation would help a 4-year-old,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
that's, trying to break it down in a way that a 4-year-old could understand it
Yeah,
would be
right.
probably somewhat challenging.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised. I mean, they have a greater capacity to understand than we oftentimes give them credit for.
Sure. Yeah, for sure, man. Out of the mouth of babes.
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, man. Appreciate you once again. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Like we always say, we view it as a resource. So liking, sharing, subscribing, all those things that kind of get it out there. We'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And we will see you next week.
All right.